Hello, hello.
Sounds like there's a ghost.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to see if you could hear me.
Hello. Yes. Okay, so I was going to talk about building a Linux virtual machine for you to do development with.
Recording.
And so I'm going to preface this by saying if you're going to deploy a server, you will need to do a different procedure, although it will have many elements in common with this.
What do you mean if we deploy a server?
Well, okay, so if this is going to be out on the internet and serving your web pages,
Oh, okay.
you want to do something different. This is really for development because we're really not hardening the server the way, beyond the defaults, which are actually already pretty hardened. And you'll see us engaging in a lot of things to get around that to override that hardening. But the nice thing about using a Linux server in this capacity is that you're running on the actual target environment. Assuming you're going to in fact use Linux servers for your deployment, and developing in your target environment is generally a good thing. It avoids an awful lot of bugs. The other is that judging from all the machinations you guys have gone through to get Drush to work, Drush is really seems to be a native Unix or Linux kind of utility, and we're doing an awful lot to try to simulate that in Windows environments. This is its native.
I thought Drush was written in PHP.
I think it's a combination of shell scripts and PHP.
Okay.
So, it's actually an easy thing to get installed and up and running, and you can do this in about 45 minutes or so, and boom, you've got a separate environment for each client, all sorts of things. So let me get started here. First thing you need to do is to create a new virtual machine. And, assuming you've got Oracle VirtualBox installed already, new one, call this one Polista's. And so this will be the name of the virtual machine here. The operating system type today is Linux, and we're going to do a 32-bit Linux install. Some of you, as you install VBox Manager, are going to probably discover that your host operating system won't emulate a 64-bit system, and so you'll have to install the 32-bit version. I've got pointers to both on the Drupalista's blog entry, and really it doesn't matter, at least in this circumstance. You can use 32-bit, you can use 64-bit, everybody will be happy. It all sets up the same way. The next thing it's going to want is memory size. I like to be I like to be kind of generous here and give it 1024, 1 gigabyte. You can in fact install and run on 512 megabytes if you need to. So if you get tight on RAM, if the machine is shut down, you can change this memory size. Yeah, you can run on 512. It won't be as fast, but it works fine. Next part, we need to create a virtual drive. And 8 gigabytes seems to be about right for this. I had been using 15, I'm down to 10 and 8. Use the VirtualBox disk images. There are, if you should happen to need to expand a drive, there are utilities that will work with these, whereas any of these others, and not so much. VMDKs, those are used with VMware's workstation.
Where do you specify the size of the drive, or we haven't gotten there yet?
Oh, we just went past it.
Create a virtual drive.
Yeah.
But it doesn't ask me this. Oh, the recommended size is 8 gigs. Where do you change it, though?
Right there. If you want to change the disk size, change it right there.
You have do not add, create a virtual drive, use an existing drive. You don't have an option to change it.
Hang on. Come back to it. Okay, so create a virtual hard drive. Go ahead and create it.
Right?
Is that right? Let me cancel this. We'll start over. Okay, 2024. Next, create a virtual hard drive. Okay, yeah, choose the VDI, dynamically allocated, and now you get to, now you get to choose the file location and size.
Oh, so this is where you want to stick the...
If you want a bigger disk, this is where you tell it you want a
Okay.
bigger disk.
Now, how do you tell it... Oh, it's going to put the files where it wants... Oh, okay, it's going to put them in VirtualBox VM. Okay.
Yeah, or you can choose a different location for them if you want, but...
Yeah, VirtualBox. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and so, one of the things about virtual machines, they will chew up disk space like there is no tomorrow. So sometimes you have to move them off onto other drives. This is where you will tell it where to do that. So 8 gigabytes will be fine. So now I've got, you know, a raw virtual machine. It's powered off. And need to wander through the settings here. So these are fine. The defaults are fine for general. For system, the boot order, I just take the floppy off because there isn't one in the system. If you've got more than one processor in your host, you can limit the number of processors it uses here, and you can limit the number of the amount of CPU time it will use. So I usually just give mine one CPU and 100%.
Oh, how'd you get there?
Okay, so click Settings. So select your VM. Click Settings.
It's got a box up and running, and I can't get out of it. Okay. So settings. Okay.
So general, don't need to change that. System,
Okay.
we've already set that up, but uncheck the floppy. It just boots faster.
Okay.
Display, you don't
What
need to
about
change.
network?
I'll get there.
Okay.
If you've got multiple displays, you can set that up here. Video capture, stuff like that.
How many CPUs do you want to give it?
One's fine.
One's fine.
Yeah, that's the default. If you're really, you know, if you're on an i7 and you've got CPUs to burn, You can give it 2, but I find 1 to be quite sufficient.
How much video memory?
Yeah, 12 megabytes is fine.
Really? Wow.
No GUI.
Okay.
This is command line only. Okay, storage. Here's where we need to pay attention to some things. This is the disk that we set up here. But for the CD, we need to select a disk image. And so for us, I'm going to select the Ubuntu server 32-bit edition.
How'd you get there?
Okay, so click storage.
Right, got there. See the empty.
Click the empty. And then see this little CD icon
click
here?
On the okay, click on the CD, okay.
Click on the CD icon and select your operating system. If you're setting up a 64-bit one, you'll select this file, which is the 1404 server AMD 64.
How are you finding those images? Because mine doesn't show those.
Probably because you haven't used them before. This is like recently used images. If you want to select one from a disk directory,
okay.
So click the little this icon.
Right. Okay. So we got to go choose one. Okay.
Yeah. But since I've been building them to debug both the setup and the procedure, I've been using those recently. So that's fine. Audio, I'm not worrying about that. Network. Here's where you need to change things. So adapter 1 is attached to network. NAT stands for Network Address Translation. You need to change this to bridged adapter. And what this does, this now basically puts the virtual machine directly onto your LAN. So in my case, I've got a cable modem, router/firewall, and that handles all the IP address assignment and MAC address resolution, that kind of stuff. So this, it just goes out there, it gets its IP address from that, and we're fine. And if you need to access your VM from an outside machine, you can do so.
Now, what happens if you have both an Ethernet and a wireless? Just go to adapter 2 and make the appropriate changes?
Yeah. Well, no, don't enable adapter. Well, actually, yeah, if you wanted to enable adapter 2 and put it on the wireless, you could do that. But in my case here, I don't have the wireless turned on, and it's strictly a wired Ethernet connection.
Oh, but the only network we're going to be using is from our machine to the server, so there's no reason to actually go through the wireless because we're not going to allow other machines to attach to us.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no point in going through the wireless.
Okay.
Serial ports and USB we don't need, and shared folders we don't need to worry about. Ultimately, okay, but shared folders can be useful. So you can take a folder on your host machine and make it visible to the VM. But I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure how we access this under Linux. So that's a part I haven't figured out yet. And so I will not go into tonight. So now that we've made these changes, we click OK, and we can start the VM. And the VM starts out of sight. Okay, so
Oh, Polsky.
yeah, I think not. Although if you want to run the trivia contest, what was the first language ever translated to for Linux?
No idea.
It was redneck.
Ah,
And in fact, for many years, you could install using the redneck language option.
What is a redneck language?
It is the deep Appalachia dialect of American English.
Okay.
Today I'm going to use English. And then the next wants to install Ubuntu server, which we will, we hit enter to select that.
Hold on a second.
Oh.
I got a, when I clicked on English, it says you've clicked the mouse inside the virtual machine display or press the host keys. This causes the virtual machine to capture the host pointer.
Oh, we don't have mouse integration, so just cancel out of that.
Okay, so just hit enter?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, because it's right. There's no straight command line. Okay.
Okay, and the okay, so the installation language English. Hit enter to select that, and the United States. This is our location. And so I tried using this keyboard detection layout. Don't use it. Just hit enter and it will ask you what keyboard you want and you can tell it. English US, that is my keyboard, so we hit enter to select this. And then the keyboard layout is English, is the standard English US. Oops, we lost somebody.
I think we're still all here.
Kathy?
Well, she's muted, but she's in the list of names.
Oh yeah, it looks like she's here. Okay, so now it's doing the initial
I'm here.
install.
Now, how do you get off the initial page? Oh, you got to hit F2 to choose language?
I hit enter to choose a language.
Okay, you have the auto capture keyboard option turned on. This will cause a virtual machine to automatically capture the keyboard every time. Do we want to?
Okay, so I'm gonna get back in here. And this will be Drupalista. Hit tab to advance to the next menu item and enter to select, which has us continue. So here's where you set up your, your primary user account. Used to be every machine had root. We've gotten away from that for security reasons. And although the account still exists, it's typically not not allowed to log in. So basically just type your name here. Go on to the next screen. The account name will be Dave. That's fine. And I'm going to type in a password. Again, tab to select, to highlight continue, and then enter to select it. Type the.
You want to use a name that's consistent with your website. I'm assuming you're going to spool up a server for each website.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
So you want to keep your website names and usernames all consistent, like admin and whatever your standard password is.
Yeah. Yeah, you could. Yeah, that would be a smart thing to do. So mine, I always use Dave in a usual password. We do not need to encrypt our home directory, so select no here, or just hit enter. It's correctly figured out my time zone, but check this, yours may not be the same. Or it may not figure it out correctly, but for whatever reason, it always figures out mine fine, so I will just accept yes. We're in Pacific, Los Angeles. And now, right now we're essentially running live off the CD. Before we can install software on the hard disk, we have to partition it. And unlike other operating systems, Linux uses multiple partitions for different things. For instance, there's a swap partition, and it lets it, handle virtual memory without letting a file system get in the way. In our case, for this simple setup, we use guided, use the entire disk, and set up the logical volume managers, what LVM stands for here. So we'll hit enter to select that. Yes, that's our disk. And now it wants to because once you write these partition tables, if this were an actual physical hard disk, it would irretrievably wipe out all the information on it. So the default is no, we don't want to do that, and in fact we do. So you have to hit tab to select yes, and then hit enter to share the amount of volume. Yeah, use the whole thing. Again, the default is fine. And it will tell you what tables it sets up. So again, the default, I've never had to alter these, alter what it calculated. So
does it really need 8 gigs?
Not really. But now the interesting thing with these virtual VM disks, if you select dynamically allocated, VirtualBox only allocates as much space on your host disk as is actually used on the virtual disk.
Oh, did we select the that option?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I selected dynamically allocated for this. If you need better performance, and indeed for some of my other VMs, they're fixed. So it will if you want a 25 gig disk, it will allocate 25 gigs, and that space is dedicated, and it treats it. you know, it basically treats it just like a hard disk. So we're going to go ahead, write the changes to the disk here. It'll create the partitions and initialize the file systems. And now it's copying the operating system onto the disk. This is an excellent time to run out for either a cup of coffee or another beer.
Have you looked at Vagrant at all?
I have not.
Supposedly Vagrant you set up a base machine somewhere, and then to bring it up you just do Vagrant up and give it the machine name, and it does all this stuff for you.
Ah, okay.
But I've not played with it. I just was talking to somebody about it, and they said I need to look into that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Vagrant
yeah.
you can define a system, and if you got multiple users on your team, it will create the identical setup on all machines.
Hmm. Yeah, although you're going to have to, it sounds like you'll have to do the initial setup, so you need to understand what, you know, at least
Right.
have
Oh,
some
yeah.
idea of what all this
Right.
stuff is anyway.
Right. Oh, I agree.
Okay, we have no HTTP proxy server in our little universe here. So we will leave that blank. And now it is pulling down configuration information for the apt-get installer.
What's the apt-get
Okay, so Linux has package repositories online. So if you want to install something you don't have, it will go get them. It will automatically download the packages for you from known good repositories.
Oh, cool.
This is another good spot to go get a cup of coffee. Okay, so upgrades on the system, you've got a couple of choices that make sense. One is to just select no automatic updates, and you know, if you're on a development system, yeah, you probably want to know when something updates because it might break something. So I typically choose no automatic updates in this case, but on ones I'm really going to use for something, I'll tell it to install the security updates automatically. So it's really, yeah, it's really kind of up to you, but for development work, I say no automatic updates. So we'll hit enter to select that. Now, we select the, basically these are the fundamental software packages we need. And so for this use, we need the OpenSSH server. So it's highlighted, type space to select it. We do not need a DNS server, but we do need a LAMP server. So this will be the Apache, MySQL, and PHP. We don't need a mail server or any of these other items.
If we want to have the website send out emails, would you need that?
That's
part
for sending emails, that's already installed.
Okay.
Okay, so hit tab to go on to and enter to select continue. OpenSSH allows us to use something like PuTTY to talk to the server. And that can be quite useful. Well, that's useful in two respects. Now, let's see here. There is, yes, we should set a password. Okay, we should set a password for the SQL server. So I'm going to set it to the same password I use for my account, just because it's easy to remember. And repeat it again. And again, tab to get to the continue button or to the next item. Enter to select it.
Why do we want to put a password on the MySQL on a dev machine? Just because?
Yeah, just because. You're going to have one in there in production. So if you've got some authentication failure, you'll see it in development instead of waiting until it's in the test environment. But back to SSL, or actually SSH. The SSH server lets you talk to it with something like PuTTY, which is an SSH client for Windows. It also lets you use something like FileZilla to FTP files to it without actually having to install and run the FTP daemon. So that's definitely a plus. Ideally, we'd use a shared folder to move stuff between the machines. And
you can go back and set that up at any point in time, right?
Yes, you could. Yeah, if you wanted to do FTP later, you can do FTP later.
No, the share folders.
Oh, yeah, certainly. And you should be able to set up, well, yeah, you can configure Apache to serve out of the shared folders too, so.
What do you mean?
Well, okay, so Apache has this notion of a doc root for the site, and we'll get into this later. The default is /var/www/html, and I'm not going to change that in this install. Okay, so when you ask for a file from from the web service, that's where it goes to look for it.
Okay.
And so that's the base directory for our Drupal install.
Okay. Now, you don't change it just because you want to let it stay standard?
My goal here was to simplify the installation as much as possible.
Okay.
Funny how that last 3% takes such a long time. Okay, so let's see here. Yes, we do want to install, Grub is the bootloader, and yeah, we do want one on our hard disk. It's, again, the VMs are just like a physical machine in this regard. So, we just select the default. Yes, we want to install Grub as our bootloader. Okay. We actually don't need to remove the CD for, I think VBox seems to be smart enough to take out the CD for us, so we just continue. Now it'll just reboot itself. And this is all the usual startup kind of stuff. Okay, so Apache's not fully configured yet, so it doesn't know what host it might be, and actually it doesn't. For this purpose, it doesn't need to know. So it wants us to log in. Now I'm going to minimize. This is the virtual console. Wait a minute, I can't do that yet. come back. I have to log in here, and I have to find out one thing. I need to know this number right here, 192.168.1.26. Because now...
Where do you see that?
Let's,
Oh, there you go, IP address.
yeah, IP address for ETH0. So...
Okay, I logged in, but it doesn't give me that.
Are you using the 64-bit version?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Type ifconfig and enter.
IF?
IF. Interface configuration.
Of course. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to SSH into this because I'm just a touch on the lazy side.
What would be the alternative? The non-lazy?
Oh, well, you could if you like to type, you can just do everything we're going to do in the console. But I can do copy paste into an SSH window, and I cannot do it into the console. So you're going to get the first time you log into this, you're going to get this, at least from Putty. It's going to say, hey, I don't know what this is. And the SSL certificate is self-signed, and we want to know if you want to trust it too. So yes, this is my machine. I do trust it. I will click yes.
Oh, where did you run Putty?
Oh, it's my desktop icon is over on the other screen.
Ah, okay.
So you're looking at the working screen here, but my other screen is not shared. So I'm going to log in as me. Put my password in, and we are in. So, okay, now we need to configure Ubuntu. And it says there are packages here that can be updated. So things have been updated since the distribution was built. We'll take care of that in a minute, because we're going to do some...
Okay, what did you have to tell Putty to log into? Just the IP address?
I just gave it the IP address. So now we're going to start configuring things. And we have to prefix almost everything here with sudo. So sudo is the single line equivalent of the old su command. And su, unfortunately, is not enabled by default. I haven't figured out how to enable it. So we'll just prefix everything with sudo. So we need to, first thing we need to do is to reconfigure some Apache modules. So we're disabling this auto index because we don't need it. And yes, dear, we know. We also, if we want clean URLs, need to enable rewrite. So that is... Now, the next thing we need to do is to install a couple of PHP packages. We're installing pair and we're installing GD. GD is the image processing package you need to run Drupal. And pair is handy, although we're not going to be using it. If you want, you can also install Xdebug here. Okay, it's telling me I'm going to chew up another 10 megabytes of disk space. Yes, I'm fine with that. And now it's going to load those modules and all the dependencies that, if there are any. And in this case, yes, there are multiple dependencies.
Oh, what was the command above that did that?
Oh, it is, well, sudo apt-get apt-get space install space php-pair, P-E-A-R, space php5-gd. And I'll be putting all this stuff on the...
Okay.
And so, good. That's all. Now everything's updated and installed for those. And I guess I could have... Okay. So I know we're going to want to use it. We're going to install Drush. You got this one, Dennis?
Apt-get, just sudo apt-get, or just...
Oh yeah, it should be
just
sudo.
apt-get? Drush. Just Drush, nothing else?
Yep, just Drush. And that's done.
That's version 5 of Drush, right?
Yeah, 5.10. Now, I've gone through, okay, so this is probably a good time to talk about this. I've gone through some interesting machinations with this Drush install. There is another way to install
You're not
Drush.
the only one.
And so Pair has an installer in it, and it has basically installer and update, and I think dependency handlers. And so some of the install instructions, will tell you to, tell Pair to discover the channel pair.drush.org. And so it links up to that channel as a repository. And then you tell it to you tell Pair to install Drush. And that was working, and that'll install version 6. But as of last night, it was downloading a invalid repository. So it might work. I'll list it as an alternative install for this. This seems to be working reliably, and if you're going to update it to 7 anyway, I don't think it matters what version you start with, because you're just going to download the files and then copy them over to the Drush binaries directory. And I'll probably get to that next week. But this is kind of the end of... there's one last thing we have to do, and that is to download these updates and security installs. So sudo and this will update all the installed packages. Got that one?
Yep.
Okay.
Running it.
Yeah, this takes a minute. Okay, and that's done. The other thing we need to do at this point is to restart Apache. That's a little more complicated. And that's restarted. Oh, the other way to do that and this in fact is equivalent and simpler to remember. Service Apache 2 restart. And again, that does the same thing. Okay, so we should have a functioning web server at this point. And that was what, 26? I think that was 26. And there it is. So Apache's up, it's serving pages. We should be largely happy at this point. Now, the next step is to get this, is to install Drupal. That will probably take about another half hour. Since we're at the half hour now, we can stop here and I can do it next week, or we can go on.
Isn't that just a normal Drupal install, or is it different on?
It's a little bit different here. Yeah, well, yes, it's a normal Drupal install for a Linux host.
Ah. We can go on. What does everybody else feel? Is there anybody else there?
Well, yeah, I'm here. I would vote for next week.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could set this up. For instance, I could set this up at work and serve my company's website off of this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, although
Okay.
if you're
Yeah, I
going
think
to...
that would be a good time to stop, and then we could try to do stuff on our own.
Yeah, get to this point and then
Yeah.
continue next week.
That'd be awesome.
How would we access a website here? We just put 192.168.2 and then slash and...
Yeah, the IP
Yeah.
address.
Yeah, just use the IP address instead of a name.
But, okay, I've got 3... Oh, because I'm only going to set up 1 site per VM.
Yes.
So, and if I load multiple...
You,
I could have 2 VMs running at the same time since they've only got 1 CPU, 1 gig. I've got 16 gigs.
oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, you could run 2... Yeah, well, you can run 2 virtual machines, but with a bridged adapter, they're each going to get separate IP addresses.
Right, which is what you would want.
Yes.
Right.
If you're doing multi-site, now if you're doing something like Drupal with multi-site, yes, now you need the name because the Apache server needs the resource name to be able to figure out what site it goes to.
Right.
So Apache server itself is capable of handling multiple sites.
Okay.
And you can go to PHP MyAdmin from here?
Yeah, probably. Let's see. I actually don't have that installed on the VM. But yes, if you install it on the VM,
Install what?
You have
PHP
MySQL.
MyAdmin,
Oh, but you have MySQL there, right?
yeah. We have a MySQL server there. That does not include PHP MyAdmin.
Right. Okay.
But if you're using something like MySQL Workbench,
Right.
then yes, you should be able to talk to the MySQL server using that,
Mm-hmm.
since that talks to a raw SQL server.
There's also one called, I think it's called Toad.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's for
Toad,
Oracle.
now it will go for MySQL too.
Okay.
Oh, how nice.
And there's
Yeah.
another one. I'm trying to find it. It's what I use. It's oh, it's right here. Trying to find the icon. Toad for MySQL. It's actually pretty decent little. It's actually, I like it better than PHP MyAdmin because PHP MyAdmin will show you the serial fields in Drupal. PHP MyAdmin shows them as a blob, whereas Toad shows the actual data fields.
Ah,
So you can get in there and change them or look at them. You can't look at them in MySQL or in PHP MyAdmin, but you can look at them in Toad.
yeah,
And there is a free version of Toad. There's a paid version, but there's also a free version.
yeah. Yeah, I've used Toad for accessing Oracle databases, but not for accessing MySQL.
Yeah, there's Toad for MySQL, so I'm assuming that's different than the normal Toad.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Toad for Oracle's like really awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we just follow the instructions of loading Drupal on Ubuntu, we should be good to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll post all the instructions on the Drupalista site. So right now there's a blog entry for tonight's session, and I'll just post all the rest of these instructions. And it's a manual install. I'm not using Drush to install my Drupal.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Dave.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, and if you got questions, you know where to find me. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording, and we're off the record.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
Well,
you, sir.
thank you. So will you be able to convert that and then upload the video, or?
Yes. Well, let's see.
Okay.
Where do you want me to upload it to?
You know what? I haven't set up the video module, and I will do that. I was waiting for us to redo the site, but I think I'm just going to do it.
Okay. Well, the other thing I could do is to give you a Dropbox link.
Okay, that's good.
Okay. That sounds good.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
All right.
much.
Oh, you're
See you
welcome.
later.
This
We'll
is
talk to
great.
you all later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.